Today we're going to be talking about vision beyond the mountain.
Wow.
Vision beyond the mountain, okay? So most of you guys know that I'm from California, and growing up in California, he's fine, sis. He's totally fine. So growing up in California, right, and being raised close enough to Yosemite National Park, mountains are really cool for me, right? And so, but then I had to marry an Alaskan. So what I thought were cool mountains, like he just upped the ante, right? And so, anyways, so in Alaska, there's a mountain called Denali, okay? And this is where Denali lies, and Denali is the highest mountain peak in North America.
Wow.
Right? And it has a summit elevation of 20,310 feet above sea level. So for those of us that were living in the Bay at zero sea level, right? So if we were living in the Bay at zero, think of 20,000 feet higher. That's like where you're trying to get to as a plane when you're taking off.
Oh.
Like after you like go up, and then you level out at 20,000 feet.
Gosh.
Right? So it's pretty high. It's pretty high. And so, it has, anyways, it's amazing. A lot of people go to summit this mountain. It's the third most prominent and most isolated peak on Earth. Now, by isolated peak, meaning that it's not like you can climb a couple other peaks to get there. Like, and if you've ever seen pictures of Alaska, and there's like this, what seems to be a plateau, and then this big, huge mountain, and nothing around it, that's Denali.
Oh my God.
Oh.
Right? So it's not like you can climb a couple other peaks and hang out there, right?
Oh.
So it's the third most isolated peak on Earth, right? After Mount Everest in Nepal in the Himalayas and the Aconcagua in Argentina. Okay? So, fun fact, 24,000 people have attempted to summit Denali. Only 52% have been successful.
Wow.
Right? So reaching the top of it, so the actual summit, meaning that they went partway and then came down. Could you imagine the disappointment?
Yeah.
Like getting partway up, but then having to go back down, right? Now, some of the mountaineers, that's actually what they do in order to adjust due to the elevation, right? For the altitude sickness, okay? So they'll go up, come down a little way, go back, you know what I'm saying? So anyways, or they'll see like, okay, this is how far I can get, knowing they may not reach the top, and then going down, right? And so it's really cool because mountains give us this incredible vision, right? So many of us have so many mountains that we actually want to climb, right? Figurative, right?
Yeah.
But why do people want to climb mountains?
Please tell me, sir.
Please tell us, right? Well, think about this. So I remember the first time I climbed Yosemite National Falls. Yosemite Falls in Yosemite National Park. It does not compare to Denali at all. Denali is 20,000 feet. Yosemite Falls is 3,500 feet. Okay.
Oh, wow.
It's like 1/7. Okay. But so here's what was really cool is going up Yosemite Falls. It was exhilarating. It was incredible. It was awesome. When I finally got there, I felt so proud that I had accomplished something. Right? And I had pushed my body for 4 hours to make it to the top of this.
Wow.
Right? And it's
awesome.
zigzag, back and forth, right? And I did this, I think, when I was like 16 or 17 years old.
Whoa.
Right? And I did it by myself.
Oh my gosh.
And I didn't have anybody, and it seems like this amazing thing, but guys, like, people just go up these waterfalls. Like, they just climb. It's like no big deal. Like Upper Yosemite Falls, people are like, okay, right? But for me at that time, I wanted to do it because I wanted to climb that mountain, if you will, not because I wanted to prove anything to anybody, but because I wanted to see what kind of character I had at the end.
Wow.
I wanted to know that I would push myself, right? I wanted to know that I would get up there. And not just that, it wasn't even about the falls, right? It wasn't even about the falls. And so this is why so many people climb mountains. Because when you get to the top, you've conquered something, right? And it's not the mountain that you conquered, it's yourself.
Wow.
You've conquered yourself that day, right?
Wow.
I conquered that day my doubt that I could push myself that hard with no coach telling me anything, with no glory at the end, with no cheering squad, with no championship, anything, no trophies, no awards, just me, right? There were several times that I wanted to quit. Several times that I was like, like trying to suck in air. I was like, I'm dying, right? But I didn't quit, and we can feel that way in our life. There's several times where we want to quit,
Yeah.
right? But I didn't, because I wanted to see what the view looked like from way up there. I genuinely wanted to see, like, I saw pictures of the falls, and I saw at the top of the falls there's backcountry, right? So I could see a picture of the falls, and I could see a picture of the backcountry, but I could never see them together. But when I got up there, I could see both, because I was there. I wasn't looking from somebody else's victory, right? Like, I could see both. I could see the water going over, and I could see the backcountry at the top and everything that pushed out beyond it.
Wow.
Right? And it was just so incredible. And it just totally blew my mind. But this is why people climb mountains, right? And so what we're talking about today is vision beyond the mountain.
Wow.
So mountains fascinate and terrify so many people. We like to sometimes look at them from afar, and we like to gaze at its beauty, its power, its dominance, all those wonderful things.
Yeah.
But the idea of standing on top of a mountain and looking out is super alluring, because it speaks to both courage and hope, grit and failures conquered, and resilience. That's what it speaks to in our soul. And then we hear about him all over God's word,
Yeah.
right? And when you get to the top of the mountain, you get these incredible views. You get views that you can see. You get also a bunch of other mountains. Right? And it's like, so it can be inspiring, and yet, wait, what just happened? Right? You know what I mean? And it's crazy, because this is actually why so few like to actually climb mountains. We love the idea, but so few will actually go climb a mountain, because it either takes too much work, or, and this is the focus of our lesson, or the mountain itself was our goal, and so it left us without further vision
Ooh.
for our lives. Just more mountains. And if you see it like that, you can get so defeated so quickly, right? And so today, what I want us to consider is to focus not on the mountain as the goal, but what is beyond the mountain is what should be our goal and our driving force,
Wow. Come on, sis.
right? We have tons of mountains in our lives. Tons of mountains. For some of us, it's the mountain of finishing school. Others, it might be the mountain of getting out of debt. Others, it could be the mountain of getting married, or even others, it could be the mountain of our marriage. But all these things have one thing in common that we're all trying to overcome. It's the mountain of our character. School takes discipline. Getting out of debt takes self-control. Getting married takes trust in God. Being married takes a whole book on character building, right? From selfishness to trust to love, there's a mountain of our past in order to even have great emotional and physical intimacy in our walk with God, in our marriages, in our relationships with other sisters, even in the relationships with the brothers. Whatever our mountain is, it's not the mountain itself that you're actually trying to conquer. And once you start to see that, it's going to be so epic for you. What we're actually trying to conquer is the character that it takes to get there. That's where, if you think about it, guys, why does that goal mean so much to you? goal means so much to you, right? For me, getting out of debt doesn't mean financial freedom. It means I finally developed the character to be disciplined enough, to honor God enough, to be a good steward with what he's given me. Does that make sense? It means that not only that, but it means that I trusted God such that he opened doors that I didn't recover that debt. He did somehow. Right? It means so much more than just financial freedom. Right? So, how many of you have conquered a mountain in your life, but then you were left still wanting? Right? You had a goal. You thought that the new job or the career, the relationship, the roommate, or even, dare I say, you thought that your salvation was a mountain that you conquered. But even in that, you were left wanting something more and still feeling empty. Because for you, maybe it was like, I got baptized, we're good. Right? Like, I finally made it to baptism. And then what happens, like, the next day or the week? Right? All of a sudden, you're falling away because you're like, I thought that! Wait, what's going on? You know? And all this hardship happens, right? When we are, even sometimes we're left feeling empty because very quickly we can go back to a worldly point of view. Right? So maybe some of you guys are in this place right now. So what mountains are in your life? Right? What mountains? Now think about what goals are in your life, right? In Luke 13:32, Jesus tells his disciples that he will in fact reach his goal. Luke 13:32. He says, tell that fox, right? That today I will go here and in 3 days' time I will reach my goal. Right? But what was his goal? Was his goal to get to Jerusalem? What was his goal? Well, if we know the story of the Gospels, getting to Jerusalem was not his goal, right? And so many of us get our goals confused with our mountains. So what was Jesus' goal in Hebrews 12:2, right? 12:2 says, Hebrews 12:2, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Did you catch it? His goal was sitting down at the right hand of God. His goal was not the cross. The cross was his mountain. And if we think about it, we should have hearts as disciples that replicate this. Right? What drove Jesus was being with God. That is what gave him great joy. He conquered his mountain because he had a vision beyond it. Think about that. If his vision was only and alone the cross, my only vision in life is to die a gruesome death. I think about Amanda Miller, whose kingdom dream is to be a martyr. But why? Because she's inspired by people like Stephen, where Jesus, the only time Jesus is standing up off of his seat in heaven, applauding anybody, is Stephen. Right? Stephen wanted to go be with God. Right? And so her dream isn't just to be a martyr, but it's in her life and her death. It is of great honor to her God, such that she could be with him and be a co-heir with Christ on that throne. Right? So the cross was his mountain. Separation from God was also his mountain when he took all that sin on. The pain that he endured physically and emotionally, those were also steps up his mountain. Think about the pain for you to get to your goal. Or is it only getting you to a mountain? But he didn't conquer his mountain because he was focused on the mountain. He conquered his mountain because it was on his way to the goal. Some of us think, perhaps, if you're like me, I'm too selfish. Or maybe you think, no, Ariel, my reputation is already that I'm seen as this type of person or as that type of person. Or you might say, okay, well, I'm just too sad. I'm too incapable to overcome. I have too much pride. Or I'm too, like, I suffer from loneliness. I suffer from depression. I suffer from, like, you know, I'm a single mom. Nobody's going to want me, right? And we walk around with these labels. And these labels keep us from even climbing the mountain. These labels also keep us from our ultimate goal, which is to be with God in heaven, right? But we don't have to think like that. We don't have to think, well, I don't have what it takes. Because we forget the second part of that passage that says that he scorned the cross's shame, right? So in the Jewish culture, to be hung on a cross meant you were cursed. How about that for a reputation, right? Jesus is on his way to his goal to be close to God, to be returned to God, to sit with God, to physically be with him. He's on his way for that. And he has to go through what is considered one of the most shameful things in Jewish culture. And he was a rabbi. He was a teacher. He was a learned man. Like all of the things that could have come into his brain and into his mind and all his reputation, right? What are my disciples going to think? Right? That could have been there. But he scorned the shame. And he's like, these are things that are total lies. I am going to overcome the cross. I'm going to overcome that mountain because my vision is beyond that mountain. I have a goal to be with my Father in heaven, right? So I want you guys to be thinking, what would it look like for you to conquer your mountains? And I want you to be thinking, what is your goal? You see, some of us have our goals mixed up. Really, really mixed up, right? And some of us can be really discouraged right now because we've studied the Bible with so many women, so many women. And we could be like, oh, the goal is to baptize people, right? Yeah, but the goal is, the goal is to help people to get to heaven, right? Right? The goal is for me personally, my goal is to be with God in heaven, right? And my mountain is to gain the character that it takes to get me there and as many as possible with me. Yeah. And sometimes that mountain looks like bringing somebody all the way to counting the cost, shows up to church that same day, then does another counting the cost, and then walks away. Because am I going to get discouraged? Am I going to back down? And we might be like, well, I just went out and I went sharing again and it was great. But in your heart, were you settled with it? Wow. Were you settled with watching that woman walk away and going, you know what? That was her decision. And instead of having worldly sorrow, having godly sorrow and go, wow, God, like you literally just proposed to her. And she said no. Wow. Right? Are we saddened over that loss? Are we saddened because God just lost his daughter? Are we saddened because we're like, wow, like she literally just looked God in the face and was like, nope, I don't want anything to do with you. I'd rather do it easy because that's what Jesus did. No. I'd like somebody to die for me, but definitely not dying for anybody else. Right? Are we sad because she just literally walked away from God and threw the scriptures in his face? Right? Like, we have to retool our thinking. And not to be in a like harsh sort of a way, but we got to reconcile what's really happening when people walk away from the word of God. They are literally walking away from the very words spoken by Jesus as told to him by the Father. Like, hey, this is it, right? And this is what they're walking away from. They're walking away from the very creator of the universe. Right? If somebody talks smack on your dad, would you be like, oh man, I'm so sorry you feel that way about my dad. Oh, let's get together later. Let's see. I still want you to be a part of my family though.
Oh.
No, you'd be
No.
like, so, I mean, I love you and I'm not going to go off because I'm a disciple, but really?
Yeah.
As my dad? You don't talk about my dad.
Yeah.
You don't mess with my dad. Like, I don't need to defend him because he's God, right? But who are they saying no to, right? And that's what we have to really get to, right? We have to get to this point, like, what's going on when somebody walks away, right? Anyways, I got sad this week. I have to be honest. I was in some sin this week. I don't know if you guys can relate.
Yeah.
I was in some sin this
Yeah.
week. I was, and I don't actually like this sin. This sin has always annoyed me, and then I finally had to look at it for myself. And it's the sin of acedia. Acedia is the being indifferent, right? Not caring. And it was actually originally, dug into by monks. And it was actually, the sin of acedia was, it's a sin that you, especially in the religious community, that you are, that you don't want to engage and have an indifference towards what God has planned for you in your life in regard to doing ministry. And it's crazy. And so it's like, I was literally like, gosh, should I be doing this? I need to find a job. Like, I need to find a job. Is ministry for me? Like, I totally went there, guys. I'm like, is ministry for me? And it's crazy. And so I was just like, I don't like this sin because of my pride. I don't like that I had that sin this week of where I'm just like, okay, there's an indifference, a lack of care, and not really wanting what God has given me as a lifestyle.
Wow.
Right? Okay?
Yeah.
So maybe you guys can relate to
Relatable.
that explanation a little bit better.
Yeah.
But that really struck me, and I was like, you know? But then I got super emotional about it. I didn't realize it because I'm a red, so I don't always realize it right away. And so what I came to realize is that Satan had gotten me a little bit distracted because I was trying to figure stuff out, and I was like, man, I'm not doing my job. I'm not doing the job that, like, I can be doing so much more. I'm not doing whatever I need to be doing, right? Like, who am I studying with? You know, the woman that we were talking about earlier, she fell off, and like who have I gotten in there with really since? And I'm like, I've not been about my purpose. And then by the grace and mercy of God, he's like, Ariel, like, you have been doing heavy lifting, not for somebody outside of your walls, but somebody inside your walls.
Yeah.
Right? And I have been literally in like L&D studies every other day with my daughter.
Yeah.
Right? Like, having her get open about her sin, having her like just share with me where she's really at, using scripture to draw her out, like working with people at her school to figure out the best path forward, like getting tons of advice. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I didn't give up. Like and it wasn't that I was indifferent. Like, I just was working with my current ministry in my house. I didn't even realize it. And guys, sometimes what happens is when we get into these places where what we thought was the next step or the next reward or that next goal or success, right? We miss the other successes that God is actually using to build our character.
Wow.
Right? And so I want you to think about these things, right? Like, as you're thinking through, like, what are my goals? Well, my goal really should be just to be with God in heaven. Okay, well, what are my mountains? Right? What are the things that I have to climb in order to be with God in heaven and to get as many people there as possible? Right? Like, here's the cool thing. We all die today, we go to heaven. Yay! Right? Yay us! Right? But I know that our heart is to bring as many people as possible.
Yeah.
Right? But if we're going to be punching above our weight class, right? We're not just going to study the Bible with anybody and be like, oh, sweet, you said yes to Jesus. Let's go. Water, here we go.
No.
Right? That is, we're not going to build that way, right? So what are the mountains? What are your mountains? These are not your goals. Baptizing somebody is not our goal. Matthew 28, right? 18 through 20 says what? That we need to go and make disciples, right? We need to make disciples. That's what we need to be focused on. Am I making a disciple? Not am I getting this woman to the next study, but am I actually making a disciple? And is she falling in love with God? Is she sharing her quiet times? Does she want to be a part of the family because she sees it? Because God has revealed it to her. God has taken off her veil. Like, is that what I'm building here? Because that's what I want to build, right? That's what Jesus called us to build, right? Because every woman that we've studied with that have gotten all the way, if we didn't challenge her to give up some stuff and challenge her to really look at some things, she could have been in the water, no problem. She wouldn't have been faithful, wouldn't be committed. Somebody would have been playing tug and war just to get her to D time. Somebody else would have been playing tug and war just to give her contribution so that greed wouldn't be a sin that would overcome her, right? And then what would we be doing? We'd be spending all of our time with shenanigans versus finding women that really would go to the waters of baptism with a clear conscience, ready to serve God with all of their heart.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? So let's not forget that part of this process in these mountains is the mountain of our character to see a result instead of honoring God. Right? We don't want to just baptize somebody, but not honor God in the process. Right? Sometimes we get so focused on the outcome. Think about this. Think about, like, if somebody were to run a race, and they're like, my goal is to complete a marathon. All right. And then they train, and then they decide it's just too much, but they want the goal of completing the marathon, so they cheat. Right? They skip a couple blocks. They find some ways to cut through. It's not that bad. But then they end up completing the marathon. They win the marathon because they come in first. They get the trophy. They get the honor. They get the speaking engagements. They get all of the things. But what do they get? They get the weight of knowing that their character never grew. They get the weight of knowing that they couldn't meet the expectation of doing that again. Because they didn't really do it in the first place.
Wow.
Right? They get the weight of knowing that they lacked the integrity. Right? And we don't want that. We don't want that, right? So when you're thinking about the process, like sometimes the process is just building deeper and deeper roots until we find that woman who really wants to honor God with all her heart. Right? Like Val. Right?
Yeah.
Like Val is amazing, right?
Yeah.
And I'll tell you guys, like Fresno, I get the feeling Fresno is going to be one of those places where like we gotta like build some, like Val's been coming around for like how long? How long has your sister been a disciple? Like three years?
Yeah, 3 years.
Yeah, 3 years. Basically, Val's been coming around for 3 years, okay?
Yeah.
Like we only had to study with her for like a month, okay? But God had been doing the work and her sister had been doing the work for 3 years. 3 years, right? And her sister did not budge in her conviction. Did not budge, right? But will we budge in our conviction just because somebody's not ready yet? Or will we go, okay, I've put it out there. All right, here we go, right? And we have to have deep, deep convictions, you guys, on these things. So I want you to think about, aside from saying the Bible with people, like think about mountains, right? Think about the things that you want to be able to see happen in your life, right? It can be very daunting to try and conquer the mountain, right? But it's because oftentimes our focus is just off, right? We don't pass our driver's test, right? Or we're out of money, right? Or, I don't know, you've applied for 186 jobs and you still don't have one, right? But is my goal to get a job?
No.
No, my goal is to just honor God in the process, trust God, God is sovereign, right? To do what I need to do, to take the steps that I need to take in order to honor God, and just wait patiently for Him to deliver. Right? Does that make sense? Like, but it's the mountains during that waiting process. It's that mountain, that's the thing that's killing me. And I don't know if you guys can relate, But those mountains of like, Ariel, where's your character? Are you going to trust God, or are you going to run out in front of it? Are you going to trust God, or God has put Eric in your life as your discipler, right? As my husband. Am I going to trust the advice my husband's giving, as he is the authority in my life through God? Am I going to trust that advice? Or am I going to be like, no, I got this other plan? Or am I going to spin out emotionally for a couple of months, like what I've been doing on the whole job process, right? Like, what are you going to do? Like, when we see things in our life not go well, we can totally fall flat, or we can go, okay, this is just part of the mountain. This is just part of climbing that mountain, right? Like, you guys wanted to go on a beautiful trail walk. What was your goal? Your end goal was just to spend time together, right? And God was like, I got you. You have no idea what I got you. I'm going to actually deliver more. I'm going to deliver that safe place for you to be with me when you want to run to me, right? And so God does that stuff with our lives. What are the things that you're trying to see happen in your life? Right? And when we have times where those things are not happening, what is it? What is your first thought? Is it God doesn't like me? Is it I suck? Is it I'm not good enough? Right? Is it, well, let me see if there's sin? Why do we do that? Why do we do that? Why are we like, God hasn't blessed me, there must be sin? Poor Jeremiah, the weeping prophet, like, he preached forever and like saw nobody come to, like, you know what I mean? Like, oh my gosh. And then even in Jeremiah, right, in Jeremiah 17, 9 and 10, right, in verse 10, it says that he does what? He says, I, the Lord, search the heart and the mind, right? So that I can what? See if there's sin that I can punish you for and hold things against you? No. To see how I can reward you based on your conduct, right? So when things don't go our way, you guys, like, okay, what's the lesson? What am I trying to learn? Is there sin? Okay, well, maybe there is, but I don't know. But, oh man, God, this is just part of your plan, because it looks like I need to grow in this perseverance thing, right? I need to grow in my options. I need to grow in thinking outside the box, right? I need to grow in how I'm looking at life. I'm looking at it through a worldly lens, or am I looking at it through a spiritual lens, right? So sometimes it's not like I've got sin in my life, so God hates me. Like, right? Think about the prodigal son. He had a ton of sin in his life, and God was like, finally, you get it. Here, come here. You know what I mean? So it's incredible, guys. Like, I want us to retool our vision, right? I don't want us to make people getting baptized our goal, right? Does that make sense? Yes, we do want to baptize people. We do want to see people saved. But let's make disciples in the process, right? Because that's our call.
Yeah.
And when we see somebody that chooses not to become a baptized disciple in the end, right? What did we do? Right? So how do we change our thinking? Well, one, we focus on the small wins. You celebrate the small wins. Well, what happened? What happened was I shared the full gospel message with this woman. She got the full gospel message, right? And I honored God along the way. That's incredible, right? There's one more woman out there who's sharing about us, whether she likes us or not, and spreading the truth about Jesus, whether she likes us or not, right? Who knows? Maybe somebody will be like, hey, actually, who is this? I've actually seen some good reviews. I actually have a cousin who lives in another state who actually became a disciple in this church. Da, 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 da. You know, it happens all the time, right? Like, you just never know. But focus on the small wins, right? I think about, like, not passing your driver's test, right? If you don't pass your driver's test, what was a small win? Was it now you have more practice under your belt, right? If you blew it in your finances, what was the small win? I got open about it this time instead of hiding it, right? I was walking in the light instead of hiding it, right? Right? We have to focus on these things. We have to understand the purpose of the mountain. Sometimes the purpose of the mountain is all about us, and it's not about right? It's not even about what we think our goal is, right? In Proverbs 19:21, it says, many are the plans in a person's heart, but it's the Lord's purpose that prevails. The small wins are those that get you closer to God's purpose, not those that get you closer to yours even. Right? Like the Lord's purpose will always prevail. Right? Think about all those times you're like, well, I was going to take this route to this thing, and then I didn't take this route, and hey, lo and behold, there was a major accident. Or lo and behold, I met this person who was open who ended up becoming a disciple instead, right? Like, you make your plans, but the Lord's purpose will always prevail, right? Always, 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 right? So maybe your goals and your mountains got distorted this week. Anybody?
Yeah.
Right? Our ultimate goal is to be with God in heaven, right? Getting your license is a mountain, right? Baptizing somebody, that's a mountain. That's just a mountain. Do you have the ability to influence? If you don't, then you need to work on that as you climb that mountain, right? So what gets in our way? Think about this. Think about mountains. I was thinking about climbing mountains and things that keep us from climbing mountains once we're climbing, right? How many of you guys have climbed a mountain? Nobody? Okay, great. But when you're climbing a mountain, I was thinking about like in Alaska, they cause intentional avalanches, right? So that there's no surprise avalanche, right? And so they can clean it up so it doesn't take out a whole roadway while people are driving. So it's really cool. And they do that on ski resorts and anywhere where there's snow-capped mountains where people are going to be playing, resorting, or using. Most of the time they'll actually try and cause an avalanche so that they can clean it up, right? But think about this, okay? An avalanche doesn't actually happen all at once, right? Anybody feel completely overwhelmed in the last couple of weeks?
Yeah.
Yep. Completely overwhelmed, and you're like, my life is like an avalanche right now. Like, it's just like everything is coming at me, right?
Yeah.
All at once, right?
Yes.
But I did a little research. To get an avalanche, here's what you need. You need a surface bed of snow, a weak layer that can collapse, a weaker layer of snow that can collapse, and an overlaying snow slab. So you need a surface bed, okay? And then you need a weaker layer on top of that, and then another overlaying that can just kind of collapse, okay? And the highest risk period is during and immediately after a snowstorm. The underlying snowpack is overloaded by a quick deluge of snow, and it can cause a weak layer beneath the slab to fracture naturally. So I'm going to rewrite that sentence, almost word for word. So we'll make this spiritual. An avalanche only needs a surface bed of sin, a weaker layer of conviction that can collapse, and an overlaying of shallow openness. So a surface bed of sin, a weaker layer of conviction that can collapse, an overlaying of shallow openness. So if you have shallow openness and you have weak conviction, then what happens? The highest risk period is during and immediately after what? A storm. And you know, really big, it can be a big storm or a small storm, depending on how weak the layer is. So if your conviction layer is very weak, then a very small storm, like somebody saying something to you wrong, or you reading a text message wrong, all of a sudden you're literally falling away in 2 minutes, right? So underlying sin overloaded by a quick deluge of expectation to just obey the word can even cause a weak conviction disciple to fracture naturally and fall away. Isn't that crazy? And it's totally true. It's totally true, right? So how do we move forward from avalanches? How do we move forward, and how do we get to the top of the mountain and keep our vision beyond it? How do we go from the bottom of the mountain, climbing up to the top, and while we're on the mountain, thinking about the vision beyond it? How do we do that? Well, we have to understand the purpose of that mountain. That mountain isn't just to get us to the top. That mountain is to build up that conviction so that when we get to the top, we're grateful for being there. Imagine if you're going through all the pain and all the trials that we've been going through. And then going to heaven and being like, this is it.
Oh, wow.
Right? But that's what we would be doing if the mountain was our victory and it wasn't the vision beyond. Right? And that's why so many people, they accomplish one thing after another, and they stay empty, and there's no fulfilling thing, and nothing. But we're disciples. So our vision is much greater, much deeper, much more everlasting than just that one next thing. But if we're not careful, when we don't see people being added to the church, that can become the only thing we have vision for. And then when it doesn't happen, what do? We stop climbing the mountain because we get discouraged. We give up on school because we get discouraged. We give up on getting a job we really like because we get discouraged. We just stop climbing the mountain altogether because that was our goal, right? We lose total vision for our life, right? And so we don't want to be those people, right? We do not want to be those people, not at all. So the other way, so we have to understand the purpose of the mountain, right? The purpose of the mountain is it's steps to get us to see that vision and to be grateful for it, right? It builds the character that we need in order to get as many people there too, with that same heart, right? And the other thing is we've got to keep the goal in mind. We've got to keep Christ in mind, and not just Jesus on the cross. For some people, I'm just going to say, for some people, Jesus on the cross really inspires them. That doesn't inspire me, guys. I hate to say it. I know it sounds like blasphemy. But Jesus, risen from the dead, going through all of that, now in heaven, right? Fighting for us, still advocating for us, sending angels down, being like, hey, go get her. She needs, can you help her out? Yeah. That one right, no, that one right there. Ariel, she's right there. Yeah. The one that's totally jacked up, it's obvious. Get her. Right? I swear that's what's happening in heaven, guys. I am certain this is what's happening in heaven on my behalf, okay? I swear. But that Jesus actually inspires me, right? The Jesus that commands angel armies, the Jesus that rose from the dead, that had nothing held against his disciples, who was like, hey, greetings, what's up? You know what I mean? He was he's like, friends, hey, you know what I mean? Go get everybody, I want to see him. This is the Jesus that inspires me, right? The journey through his mountain was amazing and it was epic, and that's what makes the risen Jesus so incredible, right? And the same goes for us. The same goes for you. It's the journey up that mountain that is what makes the Farron of today so epic. Because I've seen Farron of the not today, right? And it's incredible to see the transformation, right? Just the transformation in Shai in the last 2 months has been epic, right? To see she's like, I'm committed to coming to church. I am not committed to trusting anybody, right? And now she's like, you're my family. Yeah. Game on. And it's just it gives me chills. She's like, yeah. You know what I mean? And I love it. She gets up here, she's super vulnerable, and it's just so cool. Yeah. I'm so inspired by that, right? Because she had to journey up her mountain because why? Her vision past the mountain was so much more. Right? Her thought process for God, to be with God, right? It is just so much greater, right? And so, right, what is your vision beyond the mountain? What does it look like for you to overcome whatever, right? 1 Corinthians 2:9. No, it says, however, as it is written, no eye has seen, no ear has heard, and what no human mind has conceived, the things God has prepared for those who love him. In Psalm 73:25 it says, whom have I in heaven but you? And earth has nothing I desire beside you. This is incredible. This is the vision beyond whatever mountain we're facing, guys.
Yeah.
Whatever mountains you have in your life, those are not your goals. That's just a mountain. Finishing school, it's a mountain. It's a testament to your character, right? Like figuring out how to drive at night, right? It's a testament, honestly, but it's a testament to courage. It's a testament to having, taking the time to train. It's a testament to humility, to have somebody go with you because you're like, I want to make sure I can do this well and safely, right? That's a testament to character, not just a skill, right? It's just so, like, God has so much more planned for us than what we can even imagine. God has a vision for your life. He looks beyond the mountains. In Jeremiah 29:11, he tells us that he has plans for us. He plans to prosper us, not to harm us. Plans to give us hope and a future. In Ezekiel 36:26, he tells us that he will put a new spirit in us and give us a heart of flesh instead of a heart of stone. And on top of that, here's what's so cool. In that same passage, it says that he will cause us to follow his ways. So not only will he give us the power to do it, he will cause us to do it. He's like, I am going to push you out there, or I'm going to create an avalanche in your life so that you have to dig out, so that you can build the muscles that it takes to handle that next load that you've actually been asking me for anyways. But you couldn't take that next load until I actually gave an avalanche in your life and you actually had the skills to dig out, right? Like, it's incredible. It's so, so cool. So God has so many incredible things prepared for us, you guys. And I want to share this last scripture with you. It's in Job, and I can't remember the passage exactly, but I'll find it for you. But it says, my days have passed, my plans are shattered, yet the desires of my heart turn night into day. In the face of darkness, light is near.
Ooh.
I will read it again. My days have passed, my plans are shattered, yet the desires of my heart turn night into day. In the face of the darkness, light is near. Right? Like, this is what we need to see. This is the vision beyond the mountain. Again, the mountains are just the challenges that we're going to face to build our character. So that we see past it, when we get to the top, when we can see past it, what we're really looking forward to is being with God and whoever else we are able to take with us. Amen? So let's look past our mountains and just look to God. Let's not let these goals, these temporal goals, get in the way, because that's not our goal in the end. Amen?